Ladies and gentlemen, but let me tell you something today. There is a mystery in the timing of life. We don't always understand it. We can't always predict it. But let me remind you of this: God knows when. You've been waiting, haven't you? You've been praying, crying, pacing the floor at night, wondering, when will it happen? When will the breakthrough come? When will the pain stop? Let me assure you, your waiting is not in vain. You see, God's clock is not set by human hands, and his timing is not measured by human calendars. He knows when. The problem with us is that we want it now. We want the answer now. But can I tell you something? If you're not ready for the blessing, it will crush you. If the door opens too soon, you won't have the strength to walk through it. If the opportunity comes before you've been prepared, you might fumble the very thing you prayed for. But God, he knows when. Oh, I know it's hard to wait. Waiting feels like wilderness. Waiting feels like silence. But waiting is not wasted time. Waiting is working time. Waiting is where your faith gets stronger, where your character is built, where your endurance is tested. Waiting is where God molds you so that when the time comes, you are ready, because God knows when. Think about it. Joseph sat in a prison, but God knew when it was time for the palace. David was anointed as a boy, but God knew when it was time for the throne. Even Jesus, oh help me say this, waited for his appointed time. 30 years of preparation for 3 years of ministry, and he never rushed ahead. Why? Because God knows when. Some of you are in a season right now where it feels like nothing is happening. It feels like doors are closing, like prayers are hitting the ceiling, like the world is moving forward while you're stopped. But hear me clearly, delay is not denial. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. God is orchestrating every detail, lining things up in ways you can't see. He knows when the right people will come into your life. He knows when the opportunity will show up. He knows when the storm will cease. But here's what you've got to do while you wait. Don't lose hope. Don't stop believing. Don't stop preparing, because when God moves, it happens quickly. One moment you're in the valley, the next you're standing on the mountaintop. One moment you're struggling, the next you're thriving. One moment you're waiting, and the next you're stepping into the promise. Does this style resonate with what you envision? Life often doesn't unfold according to our plans or expectations, and that can be one of the hardest truths to accept. We live in a world where everything is measured by time, deadlines, schedules, calendars. We want things now, we want results immediately, and when things don't go our way, we grow impatient and frustrated. But God's timing is not bound by the same constraints. His understanding of when something should happen is far beyond what we can comprehend. While we focus on the now, he sees the big picture, and he knows exactly when the right moment will come. In our human minds, we may think something should happen today, but God's view of time is eternal. He knows the precise moment for things to align, when the people and circumstances are ready, and when you're truly prepared. We may not see it yet, but his timing is always purposeful. It's not about rushing to the next thing or forcing a breakthrough before we're equipped. God's timing doesn't need to match our urgency. He knows when we need the breakthrough, when the door should open, and when we're ready to walk through it. Sometimes what we think we need right now could be a blessing delayed because we haven't fully grown or been refined enough to handle it. Trusting in his timing requires surrendering control and understanding that his ways are higher. While we wait, he is working behind the scenes, preparing the way, orchestrating events that we cannot yet see, all leading to the moment when it will be perfect in his eyes. Waiting is one of the most challenging experiences we face because it often feels like stillness, like nothing is happening. The world around us moves forward. People achieve their dreams. Opportunities seem to bypass us, and yet we find ourselves in the same place, wondering why things aren't changing. But waiting is not a sign of neglect or abandonment. It's part of a divine process that we don't always understand. There is a mystery in waiting that requires faith and trust, even when we can't see the purpose or the plan. During the waiting period, we often question ourselves and God, asking why the answer hasn't come or why the door hasn't opened. It's tempting to see waiting as wasted time, but that's far from the truth. Waiting is not passive, it's active, dynamic, and intentional. It's a time when God is working on things that we can't yet perceive. He's moving pieces into place, aligning circumstances, and preparing us for what's to come. What looks like silence to us is often the hum of God's work behind the scenes. The waiting season is also a test of endurance and trust. It's a time for faith to deepen, for resilience to be built, and for our reliance on God to grow stronger. It stretches us, challenges us, and reveals the areas where we still need growth. In the process, we learn patience, humility, and dependence, traits that are essential for stepping into the blessings God has prepared for us. Though waiting may feel uncomfortable and uncertain, it is an essential part of the journey. Preparation is a vital part of the process when it comes to receiving the blessings and opportunities we desire. There is a reason why certain doors don't open immediately and why some prayers take time to be answered. If we were to receive what we long for without the necessary preparation, we might not be able to sustain it, or worse, it might harm us rather than help us. The period of waiting is not just about patience, it's about becoming the person who can handle what is to come. Growth doesn't happen overnight. It takes time for skills to develop, for character to be refined, and for wisdom to take root. During this preparation phase, we are often tested in ways that feel uncomfortable. We may face challenges that push us to our limits, setbacks that make us question our progress, and delays that frustrate us. Yet each of these experiences is shaping us into the person we need to be to carry the weight of the blessings that are ahead. It's in the fire of preparation that we are strengthened and purified. Sometimes the blessings we desire are larger than we can comprehend, and the responsibilities they bring are far greater than we expect. Without proper preparation, we might mishandle what was meant to elevate us. It's not just about receiving the opportunity, but being ready to step into it with confidence and capability. This time of preparation is where discipline is built, faith is fortified, and vision is clarified. It's where God works on the areas of our lives that need adjustment, so that when the time comes, we won't just receive the blessing, we'll thrive in it. Preparation isn't punishment, it's protection. It ensures that when the door opens, we won't just walk through it, but we'll stay and succeed on the other side. It's an act of love and care from a God who knows that the right thing at the wrong time can become the wrong thing entirely. That's why preparation is so essential to the process. A delay can feel like the most discouraging thing in the world. When you've prayed, worked hard, and waited, only to see no movement. It's easy to assume that the answer is no, but a delay is not the same as a denial. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. God's timing doesn't follow our clocks or calendars. What we perceive as a delay is often God's way of ensuring that everything falls into place at the perfect time. When you're in a season of waiting, it can be tempting to lose hope or to feel forgotten. It's natural to wonder why others seem to be moving forward while you remain in the same place. But what looks like stagnation to you might actually be preparation. Delays are often a sign that God is working on things behind the scenes, arranging circumstances, developing your character, and ensuring that when the opportunity comes, it will be everything you need and more. Delays are also a way of teaching us patience and trust. It's in those moments of waiting that we learn to lean not on our own understanding, but on God's plan. We realize that we are not in control, and that's okay, because the one who is in control knows far more than we do. He sees the end from the beginning and knows exactly what needs to happen and when. What feels like a setback is often a setup for something greater than we imagine. Sometimes what we think we need right now would be incomplete or even harmful if delivered prematurely. A delay allows time for all the pieces to come together. It ensures that the opportunity is fully ready, that you are fully ready, and that the blessing will serve its intended purpose. Trusting in the delay means understanding that God is not withholding good things from you. He is preparing something better than you could have imagined. So when you face a delay, don't despair. It's not a denial. It's a process. It's a pause with a purpose. And when the appointed time comes, you'll see that the wait was worth it. Every moment of delay is a part of the divine plan to bring you into something extraordinary.
The stories of Joseph, David, and Jesus remind us that waiting is not a sign of insignificance, but a precursor to greatness. Each of these individuals experienced seasons of delay and preparation before stepping into their destinies.
These moments of waiting were not wasted. They were essential for shaping their character, refining their purpose, and aligning their circumstances with God's perfect plan.
Joseph's journey is a profound example of waiting with purpose. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and later imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit, Joseph's life seemed like a series of setbacks. Yet those years of waiting were shaping him into the man who would one day rise to a position of great authority in Egypt. In the dungeon, Joseph learned humility, patience, and reliance on God.
When his time came, he was ready not only to interpret Pharaoh's dream, but also to manage the resources of a nation during a famine. What looked like delay was actually preparation for his destiny. David, too, experienced a prolonged season of waiting. Anointed as a young boy to be king of Israel, David didn't ascend to the throne immediately. Instead, he spent years in obscurity, tending sheep and later fleeing for his life from King Saul.
During those years, David developed the heart of a shepherd, the courage of a warrior, and the wisdom of a leader. His waiting season was where his faith was tested and his trust in God was solidified. When he finally became king, he was not only ready to lead, but also capable of honoring the responsibility that came with his position. Even Jesus, the Son of God, demonstrated the power of waiting. Though he had a divine mission, he didn't begin his public ministry until the age of 30. For 3 decades, he lived in relative obscurity, working as a carpenter and preparing for the purpose he was sent to fulfill. His waiting was not wasted. It was a time of preparation, learning, and alignment with God's perfect timing. When the moment came for him to step into his ministry, he was ready to fulfill his destiny with power and precision. These stories show us that waiting is not a punishment or delay in purpose. It is an essential part of God's process. It's in the waiting that he molds us, teaches us, and prepares us for the greatness he has in store. Through the examples of Joseph, David, and Jesus, we are reminded that the wait may be long, but it is never with purpose. Waiting often feels like a season of inactivity, but in reality, it is a deeply transformative and productive time. While it may appear on the surface that nothing is happening, waiting is when some of the most important work occurs within us and around us. It's a time when our character is refined, our faith is strengthened, our perspective is aligned with God's purpose. What looks like stillness to us is often the season where God is doing his most intricate work.
In the waiting, we learn patience, not just the ability to endure time, but the grace to trust the process. Patience teaches us that not every blessing is instantaneous, and not every outcome is immediate.
Some things take time to grow, and waiting gives us the opportunity to cultivate perseverance. It's in this season that we begin to appreciate the journey rather than rushing to the destination. Each moment of waiting becomes a step toward growth, maturity, and wisdom. Waiting is also a time when God works behind the scenes in ways we cannot see. He is aligning circumstances, preparing people, and orchestrating events that will bring about his perfect plan.
Just as a seed is planted in the ground and grows unseen before it breaks the surface, the work God is doing during our waiting season is often hidden but essential. He is setting the stage for what is to come, ensuring that when the moment arrives, everything is in place.
Beyond external preparations, waiting is a time of internal transformation. It's where our priorities are clarified, our trust in God is deepened, our reliance on his timing is solidified. In the quiet moments of waiting, we often hear his voice more clearly and understand his purpose more profoundly. Waiting pushes us to depend not on our own strength or understanding, but on his wisdom and provision. Waiting is not passive, it's active. It requires faith, prayer, and a willingness to remain open to what God is doing in and through us. It's a season of work that may not be visible to others, but is critical for the fulfillment of God's plan. Through waiting, We are shaped into the people we need to become so that when the time comes, we can step into the opportunities before us with confidence and grace. When the appointed time comes, change can happen suddenly. A season of waiting, which may have felt endless, can shift in an instant, bringing breakthroughs and blessings that leave you marveling at how quickly things turned around. This is the nature of divine timing. God's plans unfold not gradually, but often in a moment of divine acceleration, where everything aligns and the pieces of your life fall into place in ways you couldn't have imagined. One moment you may feel stopped, lost, or overlooked, wondering if the promises you've held on to will ever come to fruition. Then, almost without warning, doors open, opportunities appear, and solutions emerge. It's as though the waiting period was the tension before the release, and when it happens, it's swift, decisive, and unmistakable. This suddenness is not random. It is the culmination of everything God has been preparing in the background. The quickness of God's action reminds us that He is not constrained by human timelines. What takes people years to achieve, He can bring about in a single moment. What seemed impossible yesterday can become reality today. This is the power of a God who operates outside of time, who knows the end from the beginning, and who can accomplish His will with a single command. But this sudden breakthrough is not without purpose. The time spent waiting and preparing ensures that when the moment comes, you are ready to step into it. It's not just about the blessing arriving, but about your ability to recognize, receive, and steward it well. The waiting has strengthened your faith, refined your character, and prepared you for the demands and responsibilities that come with the blessing. When you're in a season of waiting, silence can feel deafening. You pray, but there seems to be no answer. You search for signs of progress, but nothing appears to change. It's easy to assume that the silence means inactivity or absence, that perhaps God has forgotten about you. But silence does not mean God isn't working. It simply means His work is happening in ways you can't yet see or understand. In these silent moments, God often does His deepest and most profound work. He is not only preparing the circumstances around you, but also transforming you from within. It's during this quiet time that your faith is tested, not by grand miracles or visible signs, but by the simple, steadfast belief that He is faithful, even when you can't see His hand at work. Silence teaches you to rely not on your emotions or external validations, but on His promises, which never fail. The silence is also an invitation to draw closer to Him. It's in these moments of perceived stillness that you're given the opportunity to listen more intently, to seek Him more fervently, and to trust Him more deeply. Silence clears away the distractions and noise of life, creating space for you to hear His voice in ways you might not when everything is moving quickly. It's not that God isn't speaking, it's that He's speaking in a way that requires you to tune in with your heart rather than your ears. While it may feel like nothing is happening, God is aligning the pieces of your life in ways you cannot comprehend. He's preparing people, opening doors, and removing obstacles, even if it's all happening beneath the surface. Like the roots of a tree growing deep into the soil, the work being done in the silence is foundational and critical for the growth and stability that will follow. Endurance in the silence requires a faith that says, even when I don't see it, I know you're working. Even when I don't hear it, I trust your plan. This kind of trust is not easy, but it's where your faith matures and deepens. Silence is not a sign of abandonment. It's often a sign of preparation. God is moving pieces into place, not according to your schedule, but according to His perfect timing. In the silence, He is setting the stage for something greater than you could ever imagine.
During the waiting period, it's crucial to maintain hope and trust, even when the circumstances seem bleak or stagnant. The temptation is to give up or to lose faith in the process when you don't see immediate results.
But the key during this time is to keep moving forward, even if it's with small steps. Faith is not just about believing that God will act. It's about continuing to believe even when the breakthrough seems distant. The strength to hold on, to keep trusting, and to keep believing is what ultimately positions you to receive what God has in store for you. While you wait, it's essential to keep preparing yourself for what's ahead. If you are expecting a door to open, don't stand idly by. Prepare for the opportunities if it's coming tomorrow. If you are waiting for a new season of your life to begin, make sure you are ready emotionally, spiritually, and mentally for what's to come. This preparation might look like learning new skills, working on your personal growth, or aligning your heart with God's will. The act of preparing is an expression of faith that God will keep his promises, faith that the waiting period has a purpose, and faith that when the time comes, you will be ready to step into the future he has for you. There are times when the waiting season can seem frustrating and long, but don't allow frustration to lead to doubt. It's important to remember that every moment of waiting is part of the journey that leads to the appointed time. God doesn't waste any part of our lives. Even the waiting serves a divine purpose. Trust that every day you spend waiting is one step closer to the promise being fulfilled. Hope is an anchor during this season. It keeps you grounded when everything around you seems uncertain. Without hope, the waiting can feel unbearable, but with it, you can hold on through the toughest moments, knowing that God is working, even when you can't see it. So while you wait, choose hope, choose trust, and choose to prepare, because when the time arrives, you'll be able to walk confidently into the promise that God has been preparing for you. When you can trust that God is orchestrating the events of your life, it frees you from the burden of feeling like you have to control everything or understand everything that's happening. You can release your anxiety about the unknowns because you believe that God is arranging things in your favor. He is placing people in your life, moving situations into place, and aligning the right moments for you to step into the fullness of his plan. His work is like a masterful symphony where every instrument knows and pause plays a part in creating something beautiful, even if the individual movements seem disconnected at the time. This trust in divine orchestration requires surrender. It's letting go of the need to know every step of the journey and being willing to follow where God leads, even when it doesn't make sense. It's knowing that even in the moments of waiting, frustration, or uncertainty, God is not inactive. He is not absent. He is busy behind the scenes, aligning people, opening doors, and closing others, all to bring about the outcome that is best for you and his kingdom. This kind of trust allows you to live in peace, knowing that every delay, every detour, and every setback is part of a larger picture, a picture that will ultimately bring you to a place of fulfillment and purpose. God's orchestration in your life is not limited by human understanding of time or circumstance. He is outside of time, orchestrating everything with perfect precision. What seems like a random encounter, a delayed prayer, or an unexpected challenge is often part of God's intricate plan unfolding in ways you can't yet understand. His plan is always good, and though it may require patience, trust, and waiting, the outcome will always be worth it. Even when you can't see it, trust that God is working tirelessly to bring everything together for your good and his glory. As we reflect on the journey of waiting, we realize that it is not a passive or wasted experience. It is a transformative process where God works behind the scenes, preparing us for the future he has destined for us. We may not understand the timing, and we may not see the immediate results, but we are reminded that God's timing is perfect. Every delay, every silent moment, and every season of waiting is a part of a grand orchestration designed by the creator of the universe, who knows what we need when we need it and how it will come together. Waiting teaches us patience and endurance, and in this time we grow stronger, more refined, and better equipped for the blessings ahead. Like the lives of Joseph, David, and Jesus, our waiting period shapes our character and prepares us for what God has in store. It builds our faith, helps us trust in his plan, and reminds us that delays are not denials. They are simply part of God's perfect timing and preparation. Through the waiting, we are challenged to stay hopeful and active, continuing to trust, prepare, and believe that God is working even when we can't see it. And when the appointed time comes, the breakthrough is swift and powerful, a result of all the unseen work that has been done in the waiting period. Our trust in divine orchestration allows us to rest in the peace that God is aligning every detail of our lives for his purpose. In the end, our journey of waiting teaches us to surrender our need for control, trusting that God is at work even in the silence, even in the delay, and even when we cannot fully understand his ways. He is always moving on our behalf, preparing us for the fullness of his plan. So let us wait with expectation, knowing that in God's perfect time, everything will come together for his glory and our good.